When we think of private islands, we imagine paradise, white sand, turquoise waters, billionaires sipping champagne in total seclusion. But here's the truth no one wants to talk about. Behind the glossy magazine covers and luxury travel ads, many private islands hide dark, disturbing secrets. Because islands aren't just playgrounds for the rich, they're fortresses. They're places where billionaires can live beyond the reach of law, where scandals are buried, where corruption and crimes vanish under the waves. Some of these islands cost more than small cities, yet they sit rotting, cursed by the very secrets their owners tried to hide. Today, we're uncovering 5 private islands that hide dark secrets, from corruption and greed to crime, curses, and legacies so toxic they'll make you see paradise in a whole new way. Number 1. Little Saint. James, Jeffrey Epstein's Island of Horror. Perhaps the most infamous private island of them all is Little Saint. James, a 70-acre paradise in the U.S. Virgin Islands. On the surface, it looked like a Caribbean dream, luxury villas, private beaches, and even a bizarre blue and white temple-like structure. But behind the palm trees, the island was hiding one of the darkest scandals of modern times. It belonged to Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier who used it as a base for a global trafficking network. Survivors testified that Epstein flew in underage girls, celebrities, and politicians. Rumors swirl of secret tunnels, hidden cameras, and ritual-like gatherings. Locals dubbed it Pedophile Island and Orgy Island. The strangest part? Despite countless red flags, Epstein operated openly for years. The island became a fortress where law enforcement rarely set foot. Its remoteness gave him total control. Today, after Epstein's death, Little Saint. James sits abandoned, its villas crumbling, but the stain of what happened there makes it less a paradise and more a monument to the darkest abuse of wealth and power. Number 2. Lanai, Larry Ellison's Island Empire. In 2012, Oracle billionaire Larry Ellison bought 98% of the Haw, Iron Island of Lanai for $300 million. On paper, it looked like a philanthropic dream. Ellison promised to transform Lanai into a model of sustainable living, with organic farms, renewable energy, and ecotourism. But locals tell a different story. Overnight, Ellison became the effective ruler of the island, owning nearly all the land, homes, and businesses. Residents who had lived there for generations suddenly found themselves at the mercy of a tech billionaire's vision. Rents soared, jobs became tied to Ellison's companies. Some locals accused him of turning Lanai into his personal playground, where decisions about schools, infrastructure, and community life were dictated from the top down. Even stranger, many of Ellison's grand projects stalled. Promises of green energy and self-sufficient farming faded. Empty buildings and unfinished projects remain scattered across the island. What was supposed to be a model for the future looks more like a billionaire experiment gone wrong, one that turned an entire community into a colony. Number 3. Poveglia, the cursed island of death. Not all dark islands are owned by billionaires. Some are cursed by history itself. Enter Poveglia, a small island near Venice, Italy, often called the most haunted island in the world. In the 18th century, it was used as a quarantine station for plague victims. Tens of thousands of people were sent there to die. Later, in the 20th century, it became a mental asylum, where rumors of abuse and torture spread. Patients reported seeing ghosts and hearing screams in the night. Even after the asylum closed, locals swore the soil itself was mixed with the ashes of plague victims. In 2014, the Italian government auctioned off a lease of the island, and a wealthy businessman tried to turn it into a luxury resort. But his project collapsed. Workers refused to stay. Locals protested. The investor walked away, leaving Poveglia to rot. Today, Poveglia is off limits, crumbling and overgrown. Tourists aren't allowed, and fishermen avoid it. Billionaires dream of flipping it into luxury real estate, but its terrifying legacy makes it one of the most feared pieces of land on Earth. Number 4. Great Hans Lollik, the island that was supposed to be paradise. Tucked away in the U.S. Virgin Islands lies Great Hans Lollik, a breathtaking 500-acre private island often described as heaven on earth. With its lush forests, rolling hills, and untouched coral reefs, it looks like the kind of place billionaires would fight over. And they have. But here's the irony. Every attempt to turn Great Hans Lollik into a billionaire's paradise has ended in disaster. Back in the 1970s and 80s, developers pitched Great Hans Lollik as the next saint, Bart's. They promised 5-star resorts, luxury villas, yacht marinas, and eco-lodges. Investors poured in millions. dreaming of turning the island into a Caribbean playground for the elite. But almost immediately, things went wrong. Environmentalists sounded the alarm. Great Hans Lollik wasn't just another patch of sand, it was home to endangered sea turtles, rare birds, and fragile coral ecosystems. Developers planned to cut down forests for golf courses and dredge reefs for marinas, sparking outrage. Protests erupted across the Virgin Islands. Scientists warned that bulldozing the island would destroy an irreplaceable ecosystem. Then came the lawsuits. Investors sued each other over broken promises. Local activists sued developers over environmental destruction. Some billionaires bought shares of the island, only to quietly back out when the public backlash became too hot to handle. At one point, a prominent U.S. businessman was accused of trying to greenwash the project by branding it an eco-resort while secretly planning mega mansions. The hypocrisy was so blatant that locals called it a scam. Fast forward to the 2000s, and Great Hans Lollik was still sitting empty, an island of failed dreams. Nature began reclaiming what was left of half-finished docks and abandoned equipment. Wealthy buyers came and went, each promising to finally develop responsibly. But one by one, their projects collapsed under lawsuits, financial ruin, or sheer bad luck. Locals began to whisper that Great Hans Lollik was cursed. No matter how much money was poured in, no matter how many billionaires tried to claim it, the island spit them out. Some even compared it to Bermuda's Triangle of real estate, where fortunes go to die. Today, Great Hans Lollik is technically still for sale, with price tags ranging from $40 million to $50 million. But ask anyone in the Virgin Islands, and they'll tell you the same thing. Buying Hans Lollik is like buying trouble, and that's the terrifying truth. This island shows us that money doesn't always conquer nature. Sometimes, nature fights back, and in the case of Great Hans Lollik, it's left behind a trail of broken promises, wasted millions, and whispers of a curse that billionaires can't seem to shake. Number 5. Norman's Cay, Pablo Escobar's drug island. If Great Hans Lollik is cursed by nature, Norman's Cay in the Bahamas is cursed by blood. In the late 1970s, this small island was purchased by Colombian drug lord Carlos Leder, one of the founding members of Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel. On the surface, it looked like a Caribbean paradise. But beneath the palm trees and turquoise waters, Norman's Cay became a fortress of crime, a bloody chapter in the cocaine wars of the 1980s. Leder didn't just buy an island, he built a kingdom. With the cartel's backing, Norman's Cay was transformed into a cocaine superhighway to the United States. The island had a 3,100-foot runway that served as the cartel's private airport, where planes loaded with tons of cocaine took off daily for Florida and Georgia. Escobar and Leder turned Norman's Cay into a billion-dollar operation. At its peak, it's estimated that 80% of all cocaine entering the U.S. passed through this island. But here's where it gets dark. To maintain control, Leder turned Norman's Cay into a death zone. Locals were banned. Intruders were shot on sight. Fishermen who got too close to the island sometimes disappeared. Bodies were said to wash up on nearby shores. Armed guards patrolled the beaches, while attack dogs roamed freely. What looked like paradise was, in reality, a heavily militarized cartel base. And the terrifying reminders of that era are still there. Off the coast of the island lies the rusting skeleton of a drug plane that crashed during a smuggling run. Its half-submerged body is now a dive site for tourists. But it's also a chilling relic of the cocaine empire that once ruled the seas. The US government eventually cracked down. In the mid-1980s, after years of intelligence gathering, authorities raided Norman's Cay. Leder was captured, extradited, and sentenced to life in prison. Escobar shifted his operations elsewhere. The cartel abandoned the island, but Norman's Cay never recovered. Developers tried to turn it into a luxury resort, but the island's name was tainted. Who wants to sip cocktails where the beaches once ran red with cartel blood? Today, some parts have been redeveloped, but its dark history lingers. Tourists who visit say it feels eerie, as if the ghosts of traffickers and victims still haunt the sands. And here's the most disturbing truth. Norman's Cay shows how money can buy paradise and then twist it into hell. Escobar and Leder had the resources to build anything, but they built a slaughterhouse in paradise. An island meant for billionaires and vacationers turned into one of the most feared places in the Caribbean. Even now, when you dive near that rusting plane wreck, you're not just swimming in clear Bahamian waters, you're swimming through the remains of one of history's darkest billionaire empires.